Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the zoo. The minion with me this evening is Adam.
Hello.
And as it is once again a Friday, of course, I'm the keeper for this evening, Sanguine. How are you doing tonight, Adam?
Well, I'm doing this evening. So, how are
You're
you doing?
doomed this evening, or doing this evening?
Doing. I'm sorry. My my mic might be. You know,
Did you at least take this evening out for dinner?
um, no, actually
Man,
not.
making this evening a cheap hoe?
A cheap hoe.
Yeah. You're doing this evening, and you aren't even taking this evening out to dinner. You aren't doing anything special. No, you're just fucking her right there.
Wow, dude, hold on. Wait. So, are you cooking us? And wait, can we start over? Wow.
What are you doing this evening, Adam?
I'm I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad it's Friday. Um, I'm happy that it's gonna be the weekend. Um, you know, um, yeah, and it's November, so
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, time for lots of food stuff.
Do
Pretty
you
sure.
have any plans for Thanksgiving?
No,
Ah,
I don't have a family anymore. So, uh, uh, yeah. Wow, that was.
it just sounded like they were all just killed for living in Chicago or something like that.
Well, I probably it was. Um, Yeah, hey, it's, difficult around those times of seasons for some people, right?
Yep.
So, um, but yeah, but I do enjoy a lot of the festivities of the foods. Um, and a lot of times, um, Thanksgiving, uh, especially around the workplace, we get into talking about what kind of foods we're going to be eating.
Yep.
Dude, one of the things I hate to say it, deviled eggs. Oh,
Don't like deviled eggs?
deviled eggs is fucking delicious.
Oh, okay. You like deviled eggs. With
Yeah.
the, I wasn't sure if that was a, I could eat so many that that's the only sound I'll be able to make, or if it was a, uh, why? Why do people do this?
Oh no way. I look forward to it. Although it's one of those things where it's one of those I would eat all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, but I would.
But you feel compelled to.
Yeah. But what kind of Thanksgiving do you serve though? Are you a? I mean, I guess traditional is turkey, but there are people who serve ham. I guess, right?
They're wrong. The way that I view it is every holiday deserves its own feast. So, in order to make it so that every holiday gets its own feast, I am very much in favor of different main protein for every single holiday meal. So, it's turkey for Thanksgiving. For Christmas Eve, it is a standing rib roast or Wellingtons. For
Wait, hold on,
Christmas
hold on, hold on. What's a Wellington?
beef Wellington, it's a beef tenderloin that is seared off. Then it is covered in some mustard and a mushroom duxelle, which is this mushroom paste. Roast up mushrooms, chop them up really fine with a bunch of herbs, smear that on the outside of the roast, then roll it in. Some people do prosciutto. The way that I tend to find it works better is if the outside layer of this is effectively little crepes. Sometimes prosciutto, then crepes works
Ooh,
out really well.
crepes like the French crepes, or not the
Yes,
French crepe? The wait, oh,
as
the
in the little
light
pancakes.
light light, flaky type of
The
breading.
light, flexible pancake.
Yeah.
So those go on the outside, or that wraps up the meat, the duxelle, the mustard. Then you take that and you slap that in the middle of puff pastry. You wrap the puff pastry around, and then you roast it.
Jeez, dude.
So by the time that the puff pastry becomes light, flaky, and delicious, the inside of the meat is at the perfect temperature for medium rare. Then you chop off the ends of it and slice rings and plate it up that way. Really damn tasty. So, like I said, standing rib roast or a beef Wellington. And then for Christmas Day, goose.
Wait, goose?
Goose. Goose is delicious. Goose is extremely traditional Christmas dinner.
Goose.
Goose.
That's not the same bird creature that wanders the streets. um,
Well, there's a
like
bunch of
their
different species of
Canadian eek,
there's a
right?
bunch of different species of goose, but yes, that is one of the species of goose.
Yeah, but you don't eat those kind of goose.
It can technically be one of those sorts. It's just that different geese
Mm.
taste slightly different.
Why do I feel that's like a TV special that you'd watch? Somebody enjoying roadside goose. Wait, so goose, obviously, what you're talking about is a fancy type of dinner.
Well, it was originally the most traditional, or one of the most traditional Christmas dinners. Then in America, it never really became the tradition. But in the UK, after turkey was introduced, turkey being a much larger New World bird, families wanted to show off how wealthy they were. So they went for the American turkey in order to kind of show off because it costs money to import a turkey. And the poorer families or the more traditional families, they would still have goose, but more and more often it went to turkey as families got wealthier and wealthier and wanted to show off their wealth. But I much prefer a beautiful roast goose as my Christmas dinner because I already have Thanksgiving dinner as turkey.
Yeah, so someone to change it up.
Yeah, like I said, every holiday gets its own meal. So it's Thanksgiving turkey, Christmas Eve gets standing rib roast or Wellingtons, Christmas Day gets roast goose, Easter gets a ham or lamb. It can go either way.
Man. Hey, what does New Year's get?
New Year's tends to be more about the drink, but it
No.
is typically when you're talking about a New Year's dinner, it would be something fairly fancy, but not quite a feast for New Year's. But it would be like good steaks or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, I can see it. You get
And
your
then,
prime cut.
yeah, you get a good steak, you cook it up beautifully, much like I'm doing for my dinner tonight.
Whoa. Well, what are you cooking for this evening, sir?
Well, tonight I'm going to be having a absolutely beautiful ribeye steak that I currently have in my sous vide bath. And that is going to be coming out at a beautiful medium rare. I'm going to torch it with a blowtorch to sear the outside without cooking the inside anymore. And I have some roast broccolini, sauteed mushrooms and onions, mashed potatoes, which were done with some horseradish, some chives, a bit of cheddar cheese, and plenty of butter. which will be fantastic. Also, some really nice smoked garlic was thrown in that. And I'm just trying to find where I set my bottle opener so that I can crack open. Ah, there it is. So I can crack open a bottle of wine. I'm not much of a drinker of red wine, it tends to give me a headache. But going to use a notion of red wine in a quick sauce to spoon over the mashed potatoes, which is going to be beef stock, splash of red wine, then toss in a bit of toum, which is a garlic-based emulsification to give an added bit of flavor. And then I'm going to let that reduce down, thicken it up, and it'll be a quick gravy, which should be absolutely fantastic. And according to Cannibal, when I said crepes, he said that crepes are anorexic pancakes with a lot of makeup.
Well, that's true, but it's also very difficult. Well, sort of difficult to make.
Yes. You
It's
have to
fancy.
get the batter consistency and cook time just right, because if either of those are off, rather than ending up with a beautiful crepe, you end up with either a pancake, if the batter is way too thick, you end up with just functionally burnt shit on the bottom of your pan if the batter is way too thin and doesn't sit up until after it burns. So you need to get it just right.
Yeah.
Get the right consistency.
You know, I'm trying to think. Well, okay, no, I wasn't. But what I want to say, and that was an honest truth, I wasn't trying to think. But I do want to say, uh, I want to say, I want to thank everybody for joining us at the show this evening, and especially everybody in chat. Cannibalistic
Mhm.
Wizard, Raymond Lewis, Rotten Corpse, good Lord Almighty. Thank you for everybody for joining. Um, but I do want to say that you know, I thank you for hanging out with us on Friday evening and listening to what Sanguine's cooking us or cooking for
Listening
us.
to our nattering and jaw jacking about whatever the hell takes our fancy.
Oh, that's nice.
Which, speaking of, Adam, I know that you love history. Is there a common thing said about a historical period that you really enjoy that when you hear it, it pisses you off because you're going, you're wrong? You're so fucking wrong. How the hell do you think this?
Um,
Or do you not have anything like that?
it's kind of a
Open ended
very
question.
well, yeah. I mean,
Intentionally so. I didn't want to just have you say something that I already knew.
well, no, that's okay. Hold on. I don't want to leave you hanging either. So let me actually, there was this one time where I'm struggling to understand why um I think it was a Rothschild or something like that. He went to this island and he was never seen again. And you know what? I'm damned upset about what you said, and I'll equate it to that. Um, it's probably not the same, but
Not at all. I was curious where you're going with this. I figured I'd let you go for a little bit.
but go ahead, sir. Where are you going?
Because what I was asking is like, you're a real big fan of Roman history. Is
Yes.
there something that people will commonly say about Roman history that because you're interested and you've learned about it, when you hear them say it, you immediately go, "What? No. Why are you? That's wrong. Here's all the reasons why it's wrong. How the hell did you ever think that that was right?"
Well, I mean,
So, as the most extreme example of it, the absolute wank stain that for a while was saying that Rome never existed.
uh, did she spring up again?
No, it was just an example of someone saying something so
Oh,
bafflingly wrong that it gets that sort of visceral, "The fuck is wrong with you?" No, that's everything you just said was wrong and horseshit. How the.
I think I have more of a problem with people who express their opinions with a very solid stance on it. Um, at that point, it's you're not you're not going to be able to have a like a v- like a decent back and forth with them.
So you're saying,
Um,
like, for instance, just to use an example that I've heard when it comes to Roman history, there are people that are insanely insistent upon exactly how a gladius must have been used every fucking time that it was drawn, and they will hear no argument outside of they weren't allowed to slash, they always had to stab, and it was always a very short stab, and once you stabbed, you just move forward, and then you'd stab again, and then you'd move forward. You can't slash, you can't parry, you can't do anything. It's just stab, 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 stab. Is that the sort of thing that you're talking about, where it's someone being very sure about something that they can't possibly know?
um, well, I guess not so much. Um, Not so much in I guess in the field of the the Romans, but um, with Egyptology, you'd get areas where it's a collection of uh, Egyptologists who all agree that it's this way, and then if you come up with a hypothesis for a different way, they say no.
Can you give a specific example, perhaps?
Hazi Nawas.
Yeah, the Egyptologist that was backed by the government and was the one that the government always put forward as this is the one that you talk to.
Yep.
But what about something that he
I
said?
mean, yo, it, yeah, we did. That is a wild, outlandish. Like we are going way outside of what you were talking about in terms of the Roman stuff. So, like, let's
Well,
let's.
like I said, it was an open-ended question. It could be about any of the time periods and
Yeah,
cultures that you're interested in.
yeah, but you're tethered to one part of a planetoid, but then you're all of a sudden uh shot out into space, and it doesn't matter how far out in space you are and you're thinking about things. You know, it's you're all the way out there in space. I don't know if that made any sense, but um,
Not particularly. So I'll give you an example of one of the ones that pisses me off
okay,
and see if it's something that you have an analogous thing. So, one of the time periods that I really enjoy learning about, World War II. It's fascinating. The number of people that will routinely say that the Soviets won World War II for everyone else, or that the Soviets won World War II without any sort of real assistance from any of the other allies. It pisses me off. because it makes no fucking sense if you actually know about the time period. I mean, if you take Joseph Stalin's post-war propaganda campaign, then yes, according to the Soviet Union after the war, the Soviet Union was standing alone, no one helped them with anything. But if you look at any other nation's documentation of the war, if you look at the Nazi documentation, for instance, you see that on the Eastern Front, for some fucking reason, there were a shit ton of Shermans and American-made tanks on the Russian side of things of the Eastern Front. Which, if the USSR was completely alone, why the fuck were there so many Shermans and various other American-made tanks? Now, the actual reason is Lend-Lease was an absolute monster of a thing, and I mean monster in a positive way. It's an absolute beast. It was perhaps one of the best things that the US has ever done, develop Lend-Lease as a way of dealing with a war where we sign contracts that people will pay us back, we send them equipment, they will pay us back, but we then are able to get our shit, first of all, tested out before we actually enter a conflict. And secondly, it allows us to keep allies, no matter how tenuous of an ally they are, in the fight to distract the enemy. When you look into Lend-Lease, the sheer amount of shit that we sent the Soviets is absolutely ridiculous. It was something like 70-something% of all the copper used by the Russians for anything, for communication lines, for the jacketing of rounds, anything like that, was American copper. Something like 90-something% of the rail lines, the actual railroad tracks used in the Soviet Union for its logistics, they were American-made rail lines. It was something like 70-something% of the locomotives used by the Soviets were American-made locomotives sent to the Soviets via Lend-Lease. We sent them food, we sent them ammo, we sent them goddamn every supply under the sun. We sent them fuel, despite Russia having one of the largest fuel reserves, as well as having a massive amount of petrochem industry. Even at that time, it was one of the largest producers of petrochem. The US sent them petrochem. They sent them jet fuel. They sent them airplane fuel. They sent them gasoline, tank fuel, trucks, jeeps, fucking everything. But there's so many people that think that the USSR fought on valiantly without any help from the outside world, when no! They were fed with American food. They were shooting bullets that were either made in America and sent to them because we transferred factories over to make Russian cartridges, or we're using materials that had come from America, sent to Russia, and then Russia assembled them in one of their factories. Because we sent them explosives, including gunpowder. We sent them, like I already said, the copper. We sent them lead. We were over 55% of all the aluminum that they used during the war was American aluminum. But so many people still, for some fucking reason, go, oh yeah, the Soviets fighting valiantly alone, with no help from the West, defeated the Nazis. It's horseshit.
How did we get here, dude?
I asked if you had anything like that. You didn't know what the question meant, so I gave you an example, and that was my example. You like history, I like history. We're talking about history right now.
Well, yeah, I like history. But that was a... Wow.
Like I said, it's something that pisses me off every time I see it, but it is so fucking common. And I know the reason why it's common, because for some fucking reason, academia decided that, hey, you know the shit that Stalin said after the war? That is the most important thing that we should be talking about, rather than looking at what was actually done during the war, and rather than looking at other important figures. Zhukov. You know who Zhukov is, right?
Yeah.
For those who don't know who Zhukov is, Zhukov was the Soviet general who was put into a gulag before the war. Then Russia started getting its ass absolutely beat like a drum. So Stalin, in an act of desperation, pulled Zhukov out of the gulag that he had been thrown into and gave him complete command over the military. And Zhukov was the one who actually planned the Russian war effort. And he did amazingly. Zhukov was two things that are extremely rare in Russian generals. He was capable, and he wasn't entirely corrupt. Which is extremely rare in the Russian military. Even to this day, it's extremely rare in the Russian military.
Well, yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
So, he had every reason, because if he said that, yep, Russia did it all alone, he would have been able to point to his own leadership and say, Russia did it all alone, thanks to my leadership and how amazing the Russian people are. It was that combination that won us the war. Every reason to do that. Zhukov, though, after the war, when he saw that Stalin and the rest of the party were pushing this, the USSR stood alone, they didn't need help from anyone else, Zhukov was going, what the fuck do they mean? Our tanks were made of American steel. Some of the tanks were just American tanks. We were firing American brass. That the bullets were American lead. Our communication lines were American communication lines. Our rail lines were American rail lines. What the fuck do you mean we didn't get help from anyone else? If we hadn't have had that help, we would have lost. Which made him not very popular with the rest of the Communist Party. But at that point, he was the general that saved the USSR from the Nazis. He was extremely popular among his men. So they couldn't really do shit to him. So he was one of the few people that was actually allowed to speak.
One of the few, right?
Yeah, like I said, he was one of the few people that was actually allowed to speak because he was in this untouchable realm of, first of all, their narrative required Zhukov. Because their narrative was, it was the uniqueness of the Russian people or the Soviet people and the Soviet culture and our amazing leadership, starting at Stalin, but also our amazing generals. And the general who was the most impactful when it came to the Soviets was Zhukov. And the Soviet people already knew that Zhukov was their best general. So they couldn't slander Zhukov without destroying their own narrative. Because if Zhukov was shit, well, then their enemy wasn't as indomitable as he first seemed. And then why the hell did we have to get kicked in the teeth for so long until we pulled Zhukov out of the gulag? And then once we pulled him out of the gulag, despite him apparently being shit according to the government, we started kicking ass. And the war started to turn. And in fact, the mechanized offensive that really turned the war was entirely Zhukov's brainchild.
Wait, Zhukov?
Yeah, Zhukov.
Oh,
The Soviet general in charge of the entire Soviet military during World War II.
Yeah, just make it a bookmark. Well, shit. Yeah, dude.
It's
How did we get to Zhukov?
okay. I asked you a question. If there was any point in history that annoyed the hell out of you because people constantly get it wrong, you weren't sure what the question was. I said, okay, I can give you an example of it. And then my example was the fact that people keep on saying that Russia won World War II and that Russia was able to do this despite not having any help from any of the Allies. Then I laid out all the help from the Allies. Then after laying out all the help from the Allies, I said even Zhukov, the general who had every reason, the one who was in charge of the Soviet military, who had every reason to say, yep, it was me, when, yeah, we would have died unless we had gotten all this shit from the Americans. And then I explained more about who Zhukov was to make sure that people knew who Zhukov was. And then you asked me, why are we talking about Zhukov?
And that's how we got here?
Yes. That's exactly how we got here, and that's how I explained how we got here the first time as well.
This is awesome, sir. And you know what? I hope everybody in chat enjoyed the journey that we both and hope you kept tabs.
I think it was a fairly straightforward story.
I think it was too. I'm just, I'm hungry as hell, first off. I haven't eaten dinner, so
Bit distracted and bit dazed.
yeah, well, because at first you were talking about food, and that's what got me hooked. And then you started talking about all this other stuff, and I'm like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, we were
How
talking
do I
about food.
how do I go there to get the food? And I'm trying to
We were talking about food. Then we hit the point where we had talked about holiday meals. I'd laid out my holiday meals. And then you had already stated that, well, the traditional is turkey for Thanksgiving, but some people do ham. And then you asked me how I do it. And I said, well, I view every holiday should have its own special meal. And then I laid out the meals. Then we talked about goose for a while because you found it strange that I had Christmas goose. After talking about what a Wellington was, because I mentioned Christmas Eve Wellington. And then that conversation kind of bottomed out. So then I asked if you had any point in history that you're really passionate about that people constantly get wrong. And then that feeds into the explanation that I gave just a second ago.
no.
That's how we got between those points.
Well, I think that was a good recap.
I'm tempted to ask, but I'm also afraid to ask.
Oh no.
So, do you have any example of something like that from your perspective and your preferred time periods of history?
In my personal times of time history.
In the time periods that you like to study, do you have anything that people often get wrong that annoys you because they often get it wrong?
Um, I mean, there's a few, but since we're hanging out in the minions, I don't want to get Hammer and Reject in trouble. So we'll keep those in line. But
Are
um,
there any that you can share?
yeah, there was a recent. I can't remember who posted it, but so I think somebody was trying to make a point, and they said, "Hey, were the Mongols diverse?" And then trying like, oh yeah, like the army being a diverse thing. And it's like, well, to be honest, sir,
Yeah.
uh, yes, they were.
Yep.
Like were the Hun diverse? Uh, yeah. That's kind of, or oh no, and then they go, were the Vikings diverse? It's like, yes, to a degree. I hate to say it, but yeah.
It
I mean,
depends on what you mean by diverse in each of those instances.
exactly. But
And the
in,
thing is that
in
it's the
lesser to a
version.
hold on, lesser to a degree with the Vikings, but with the Mongols and the Huns and the Timurids, and it's, dude, they were gonna take, mercenaries were diverse.
In large part, like I said, it depends on what people mean by diverse, because there's versions of diversity where it doesn't matter that you're talking about different nations and different cultures. What matters is the skin pigmentation.
Well,
And in
I
that
I'm
version of diversity, they weren't
I- I'm
all
looking at
white.
it. I'm looking at it like the goofballs are saying it like, oh yeah, diverse people. It's all different cultures and they're all hanging out and being cool. It's like, no, it's more of diverse where they conquered a bunch of lands and they're like, okay, you guys are cool. You guys are cool. You're gonna join us in our conquest because you're useful. I mean, like just look at Egypt and what the what
Nubians.
is it, Midians or the Kush?
There's the
Who
Kushites, which are the Nubians.
the horse archers?
So that would be the Namibians, I think, were the horse archers. The Kushites were the non-mounted archers. They were effectively African longbowmen.
Oh yeah, right.
So the best archers on foot were the Kushites, which were the Nubians. The best horse archers at the time, I think, were the wasn't that the Numidians?
Yeah,
Because you had the Nubians and then you had the Numidians.
when they after they reunited Egypt. But that's what I mean. The history is so dynamic. People really want to latch on to such a simplistic viewpoint of history, and it
Mhm.
doesn't work out for it.
They want to have so often there being good people and bad people, and that the good people are this side. Also, a lot of people want to make it so that if the side is losing for some reason, they're automatically the good people, or there's another group that want to make them automatically the bad people. And it isn't really like that most of history. There are good people that won at various times and lost at various times. There are bad people that won at various times and lost at various times. Winning does not influence your morality. And I hate the normal bit of, well, the victors write the history. No, the person that writes the history. And we see this constantly. There are people that won that aren't looked back on fondly in the history books. When Rome collapsed from sacking after sacking after sacking by Germanic tribesmen, we don't think that the Germanic tribesmen were the good people in that. We look at it like, look how much these Germanic fuckers screwed over Europe. Yeah, Rome wasn't brilliant, but Rome was better than the Dark Ages. It wasn't something that was as tidy because both sides kind of sucked, and it wasn't just the victors write the history, because it happens constantly where a group will win and then be absolutely smeared in the histories. Because
there's still aqueducts that are still running.
There are still aqueducts that are still standing, yes.
So I don't know why. Well, I mean, I guess I know why people poo-poo on what they're doing, but it's
Yeah, like I said, it's people want this childish history of good and bad, and it's the Norm Macdonald joke of, well, if you look in the history book, it says that the good people won every battle. Or won every war, sorry. The good people won every war. What are the chances of that?
Right. It's not wrong, you know.
For the people that tried to have that childish sort of history, yeah, he's not wrong. But it's infuriating that this kind of idea keeps on popping up. And it's popping up in the modern day as well.
Well, the people who are in charge are having that type of mentality, you know?
To a certain degree, yes, and to a certain degree, no, and to a certain degree, they don't personally have that. They just have the mentality of, well, as long as the people are dumb enough to believe it, that works for us.
And here we are.
But you see this sort of childish idea that the underdog is always a good guy. With the people that are cheering on, some of the people, not all of them, some of the people that are cheering on the Palestinians and Hamas, some of the people that are doing that are just fucked. They don't have any real moral argument. They aren't even doing the, well, the person on the weaker side is always in the right. They're just in favor of the death and suffering. Like there was one of the hanger-ons of Hassan that just recently had his shit get nuked not terribly long ago.
What do you mean, his channel, or?
Yeah, he had his channel nuked.
Holy shit. Was it like because he said something that people misconstrued, or?
Oh no, because he said something that was absolutely horrendous. He said that there's no such thing as an Israeli civilian. So
What?
any action done against an Israeli is something that shouldn't be considered a war crime, effectively. Even things that would be considered war crimes against opposing forces, they shouldn't be considered war crimes against Israelis, according to this chucklefuck. And he was in favor of specific crimes that we aren't quite able to say on YouTube without getting in trouble.
Yeah, let's not try and get in trouble.
Yeah. So he got his channel nuked for that. And I think he got his channel nuked on YouTube as well as he got his Twitch channel nuked for it. And now there's a bunch of people saying, oh, look at the silencing. And I'm going, okay, first off, you were the people who were cheering for silencing the opposition. Now you're pissed that it's being used against you.
Yeah, it's pretty hypocritical.
Yeah, it's hypocritical as fuck. And secondly, do I think that he necessarily should have been nuked? Probably not, because I am fairly free speech absolutist to a large degree. But do I understand the desire to when he's saying that, yep, you should be able to do anything to a civilian population? Because to my mind, you're the victim. Then, yeah, I can understand why people are going, you shouldn't be allowed to say this. When you're actively calling for support of a terrorist organization and you're greenlighting any horrendous act that they can possibly do to a civilian population, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he got his channel nuked due to that. It was Second Thought that did it. Second Thought is like I said, Hassan hanger on that is always saying some of the most insane shit on the internet. Because he is not even an apologetic tanky, he's just a tanky. That's another good example of something that is constantly just what the fuck is wrong with people, where people will have an analysis of history and they'll come to the exact opposite conclusion. They'll look at something fail and they'll go, we need to try that again. No.
Wait, why would they say that?
Have you never heard of internet communists?
Oh, well, never mind.
They
They do
constantly
exist.
say that we need to try things that have failed time and time again. Failed in the same exact way every single time that they've been tried. And they're still saying, well, we need to try it again. This time it'll work. No, it won't. It'll fail for the same reason that it's failed every other time, in the same way that it's failed every other time. Because it is innately flawed. And there's been absolutely nothing done to address the innate failure of it. So it's going to continue to fail in the same way every single time.
Dude, people just don't learn.
Mm-hmm. And they don't learn in large part because people refuse to actually look at history and refuse to look at why things happened, how things happened. They'll be told by a side that they like, going back to the bullshit of you have a bunch of communist sympathizers saying that, well, the USSR won World War II. No, they didn't. They were not the reason why we won World War II. They were a contributing factor. I'm not going to say that they weren't a contributing factor, but it was not the Allies only won because of the USSR. And the shit that they use to try to demonstrate that every time is the most fucked up shit. No one wins a war by having the most people die. That's
Yeah,
not a metric for winning the war.
it's kind of it's kind of a weird metric that people bring up for that.
Yeah. Why the hell are you pointing to the Red Army going, see, the Red Army won the war for us? They had the most people die. That's not winning the war.
Yeah, no,
That's
not at all.
that's a bad indication. If you're fighting a war and you're going, okay, so how many of our people are dying? Less than the enemy. And your response is, well, we're never going to win a war like that. We need to increase our fatalities. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, they got there first. Well, okay, why did they get there first? Was it perhaps they got there first because the American leaders who were within spitting distance of the city were told to stop? Could that have something to do with why they got there first? That several days before the Red Army was able to get within distance of the city, the American army, especially those under Patton, were told to stop.
Whoa, hold on, sir. Are you? Should I go get my tinfoil hat?
It's not even tinfoil hat, it's documented.
I know it is, but there's people who will look at documented fucking files and say, "Yeah, but that's fake." I mean, there are people who will sit there and look at files and say, "Yeah, that is fake. This is where we're at."
True. But this is well documented history that has been discussed in countless history texts. It is currently documented within the presidential library because it was part of the documents from the president. Because, yeah, it came down from the very fucking top telling Patton to stop or slow his advance. And it was talked about with enough time that letters got back to Washington from the front saying, do you know how much blood this is going to spill within Germany? If we let the Red Army be the ones to enter the city first, do you know how much untold pain and suffering will result from that? And the response was, doesn't matter. Slow your advance. The Red Army is being allowed to enter the city first.
Dude, what do you think they meant by that?
I think that the president at the time, which it's not really, I think, it's more the president at the time had interesting sympathies to Uncle Joe. The previous Uncle Joe, not the current Uncle Joe.
Oh, okay.
Because FDR had some glowing comments about the Soviets for an extended period of time. So I think it's fairly reasonable to go, hey, the person that had these glowing comments about the Soviets was sympathetic to the Soviets. And those sympathies caused him to act in a way to give the Soviets more credit. Now, other people will argue, well, they allowed the Soviets to enter because it was going to reduce the bloodshed, even though every bit of documentation said that no, it wouldn't. It would increase the bloodshed. Well, it would make it so that the Soviets paid the death toll rather than the Americans. Well, the documentation, again, from both the Americans, or from the Americans, the English, the Soviets, and the Nazis, all indicated that there wouldn't have been anywhere near as much bloodshed had it been the Americans that entered first. Because more of the German military would have surrendered to Americans. Also, the fact that the German military was not allowed to surrender to the Soviets. Not by their own command and not by the Soviet command.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine they would allow them to surrender. Although Japanese, yeah, for sure.
So, saying that the Japanese might have surrendered to the Soviets.
No, never surrendered. I mean, wasn't there that one Japanese dude that was hanging out on an island?
Yeah, there was the Japanese guy who was found to have been continuously waging the war for about 50 years.
Yeah.
But there's an argument that people, again, taking certain documents in complete isolation and due to that, out of context entirely. And going, well, the Japanese were trying to surrender to the Soviets. And saying that the US shouldn't have dropped the nukes on the Japanese because they were trying to surrender to the Soviets. And that's proof that America was just trying to commit a war crime by dropping nukes. First off, it wasn't a war crime. It's never a war crime the first time. And I love that phrase, by the way.
Whoa, man. So you're saying the first time is free?
Yes. I'm saying that, and international law is saying that. And also normal laws are saying the first time that something happens, if there's no law against it, it isn't a crime. So the first time that something is done, it's not a crime. The second time it might be.
Hey man, I'm not arguing against it.
Yep.
Oh man.
I thought the guy in the Japanese soldier that was found in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it was closer to 50 than to 30.
I mean, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, Canada's the reason for about 2/3 of the Geneva Convention. And that might be a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're kind of winding down for conversation. Or do you have a topic that you would rather go to, Adam?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there certainly is a lot of stuff going on in the world today.
Would you like to talk about any of it?
Well, you lead the way, sir.
God damn it, Adam. I'm trying to open the floor for you to say something if you want. Because I've just gone on an extended hour-long rant.
Oh, that's true, but I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that that we could talk about. Like, okay, influx of different uh, quote unquote refugees coming into the United States,
Mm-hmm.
military buildup out in the Middle East, um, America, American warships fending off missiles from Yemen or the Houthis, and uh, even outside of that, just you know turmoil in Europe and
Mm-hmm. Was it Yemen that just declared war against Israel?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was seeing people saying like, "Oh yeah, well, they've always been at war," and it's like, yeah, but this is the odd opportunity where, or opportunity, but odd instance where, uh, you know, the rebels aren't fighting each other, and they're like, you know what, let's go fight Israel.
Mm-hmm. Because, as has been pointed out to many people many times, it is a continuous thing that pretty much everyone in the Middle East wants Israel dead, which is why it was so strange when, during the previous administration, the Trump administration, so many trade deals and peace talks started coming out of the Middle East. That was a massive turning point. Though, in order to acknowledge that, they would have to give credit where credit's due for those deals.
hmm I just don't know where it's gonna lead, you know. But when I think it's funny that all of a sudden nobody cares about Ukraine. uh, but the other thing is, I don't think we're gonna send any. You know, I know we sent another 300 troops over to the Middle East, but I really don't think that we're gonna get into a full blown war out there.
Now, the most that we would probably end up doing is reducing Iran's navy again.
Yeah, there might be some skirmishes, but I don't think it's gonna be anything that's gonna be as scary as people think.
Which propaganda accounts are you talking about, Trucker? Because there's a shit ton of them active about this.
Which one? Volcanoes?
No, Trucker said, holy fuck the propaganda accounts. And I'm saying that there's a lot of propaganda accounts currently active that have
Well, it's
just
part
been.
of the fog of war. So
Yep. I know there's lots. That's why I asked if you had any specific ones that you were referring to. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are trying to give credence to Hamas and the various insurgent groups. There's a lot of people that are trying to make it so that everything is, like I said, this childish idea of because someone is currently the weaker party, they're the more moral party. Like there's a series of tweets that were getting shared around quite ridiculously, where it was someone going, "Oh yeah, both sides are bad. Only one side has a functional military. Only one side has a navy. Only one side has the ability to launch missiles. Only one side." And I'm going, "Yeah, and that one side hasn't exterminated the other side. It's one of the things that pisses me off every single time. There's people that are saying, well, the Jews are waging a genocidal war. If they were, they're going about it really badly. Because if they were actually waging a genocidal war, there's a lot more effective ways.
I mean, honestly, I'm waiting to see how it all ends.
If you had your dream end to the scenario, what would be your dream end result?
Um, a bunch of them get together and do a final dance, and then share food, and then go about their days.
You definitely put emphasis on the word dream in that scenario, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the food part is very extensive in the dream because I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to be a long table, all sorts of food.
So, one thing that I wish was done with various insurgent groups, if it's at all possible, is something that would be kind of fucked up, but it would be gloriously so.
What do you mean?
If I had the complete unilateral control in how we dealt with various insurgent groups, what I would do is I'd devote as much of our intel as I possibly could to figure out as many people within the organization, especially the higher ups, figure out exactly who runs an organization, figure out everyone that reports to them, figure out who their favorite person of the people that reports to them is. Then kidnap the person in charge. Bring them to the US. Treat them exceedingly well.
I mean, you say that as you're clanking glasses in the background. I don't know if I can say that's a trustworthy take, sir. I mean, I trust you, but somebody hearing that,
Yes, they just heard me put back a rather delicious 14-year Irish whiskey.
ooh,
But kidnap the leadership. Make sure that there's all sorts of pictures and evidence that he was treated extremely well. No torture. Nothing cruel. I want to make sure that when he's returned, he's fatter, happier, and healthier than he ever was before. About a day or two after he's been in the US and we've been getting all this stuff that he's being well treated, we return him. But about an hour before he returns, or about an hour before we start returning him, we kill everyone in that organization that reported to him, with the exception of his one favorite person. Every other major leader, every other major figure that we were able to figure out who the hell they were, dead. Then we return him, and we have people that are meant to watch him for, let's say, a week. Any attempt to kill him within that week, those people stop. After that week, those people get pulled out. Because what this immediately looks like to anyone looking, even if they don't think it is absolutely the case, it's hard to think that it is entirely not the case, is it looks like he was just brought to the US, immediately ratted on everyone, was treated really well for ratting on everyone. Then everyone was killed and he was returned fatter, happier, healthier than he left.
Well, I mean, that explains it, right?
Yep. It explains everything. Why are there pictures of him being well fed? If he was being tortured, he wouldn't come back looking healthier and happier than he was when he left. He denies these claims, but wouldn't you deny the claims if he had just sold everyone out? And why is it that other people are defending him after he gets put back? That's really suspicious. Looks like he sold them out. Turns everyone against him. They eventually kill him. Next leader takes his place. Start the process all over again. Figure out every single motherfucker that they know.
Yeah, right.
How many rounds of being ratted out by your leadership do you think an average organization can survive?
I mean, if the corruption lies at the tippy top, I don't think there really is a limit to it, you know?
Well, the thing is that each time the tippy top are the ones getting taken out.
Wait, they're taking a nap?
They're the ones getting taken out. They're also the ones that end up getting framed for taking everyone else out. It prevents the leader from ever becoming a martyr.
Yeah, but now you're dealing with the younger generation vying for power.
But vying for power that they're desperately afraid is going to turn on them as well and rat them out.
It didn't sway any emperors from the Praetorian Guard, so. Ow.
I think that there's only so many times that you can do that while maintaining any sort of cohesion. That was a large part of what undid the mob.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would collect evidence on as many people in the mob as they possibly could. They'd bring in someone towards the top, not even really do anything, just sit in a room with them for a few hours, get them food, get them drink, have a chat. Person didn't say anything. They would release that person, immediately bust everyone that they had already known about, but it then made it look like that person had ratted. Which sowed distrust among the mob.
Gotta play with them, man.
Yeah, you can do the same thing with terrorist organizations.
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh.
Make it so that anytime that there's any sort of organization, they have to worry who the hell's going to sell them out. And now they're worried about the higher ups being the one that sell them out. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people saying that the massacre of the music festival was resistance. Like I was saying earlier, there was the Hassan Lackey, Second Thought, that just lost a fair number of his channels. Because live on a stream, he started saying that there was no such thing as an Israeli citizen, or as an Israeli civilian So Israel was not protected from Israeli civilians weren't protected from being targeted as viable military targets. And they were arguing that. And they were doing so not as a shit take, not as anything other than because that's what they legitimately believe. Which is fucked beyond belief. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of people saying that it's genocide. And every time that I hear someone say it's genocide, no, there's a lot more effective ways of committing genocide. If you're committing genocide and you're in Israel's position, easiest way to start, do a creeping artillery barrage. You start at one side, you start just pounding everything into glass, sweep slowly out, bring it back, and then you send in people to deal with any survivors. That's not what they're doing. I can't remember the number of structures that have been damaged, but it's a decent number of structures. Something about 10,000 people might have died thus far. Which, the number of structures that were bombarded, and destroyed by any means, and the population of the West Bank, it makes it clear that it absolutely isn't genocide, because if it was, the death toll would be much fucking higher.
Yeah, definitely much higher.
Mm-hmm. And what they're doing instead is this very methodical, slow campaign. They announced years ago at this point, which is one of the reasons why I'm still baffled by the people going, well, they blew up a hospital. First off, the most recent one, they didn't. It was a rocket failure that landed in the hospital. Second off, the previous ones that people point to saying, well, they blew up this one. Israel announced ages ago that part of their defense was counter battery. Do you know what counter battery means, Adam?
No.
So, counter battery means that when an attack is made on you from a specific location, your systems figure out where that location was. And in less than a minute, you have rounds in the air, or rockets, missiles, whatever the fuck you're launching back, in the air, targeting that location. The idea is that if your enemy's trying to do guerrilla tactics and they're move, shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, you need your response to be instant, so that before the enemy is able to move out of the area, your rounds, rockets, missiles have already hit the location. So someone launches a rocket at you. As that rocket's in the air, one of your systems is figuring out how to take out the other rocket. The other system is figuring out where to fire in order to take out the person that launched the rocket. It's been known for ages that this is something that Israel does. They do counter battery. They have the Iron Dome. It figures out how to take out the rockets. They have a secondary system that figures out where the rocket originated from, and they take out the origin. When they've blown up hospitals, it's been because Hamas has fired rockets from on top of hospitals. Making the hospital the target. It isn't just that Israel Israelis are targeting random structures. No. They target structures where attacks come from.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh, man. Pretty harsh.
The situation as a whole, or counter battery fire? Counter battery fire is brilliant.
Yeah, all of it. All of it's harsh. It is definitely harsh.
And yeah, Al Qaeda did it as well when we were overseas. They would constantly shoot from what are designated as protected structures, which left the choice of, do you take out the person attacking you, which will harm the protected structure and make you look bad, or do you just allow them to continue sniping from you? And the way that the US aired was typically we take out whatever the fuck an attack is coming from. Doesn't matter. The way that Israel's airing is we take out whatever the attack is coming from. Doesn't fucking matter. And then the US was fairly quick about, if you don't want these structures targeted, don't attack us from these structures, fuckhead.
I'll be right back.
Copy. So, chat, how you doing? Oh, you were a repair guy on a 36? Nice. It's something that drives me crazy, though, that people don't understand how shit has been done and how it's being done. When a nation says, yeah, we're engaging counter battery fire, that means that if you attack them from a specific location, they immediately shoot back. Most of the time, they don't figure out what type of structure you're attacking from. They just know you attacked from it. So, rounds go down range. It is absolutely infuriating, though, the number of people that will make excuses and water carry for terrorists. Also, the number of people that are surprised that this is happening. The number of different groups, people, organizations that are going, I'm terrified, because suddenly everyone that I thought was on my side is cheering for terrorists. And I'm going, okay, did you ever pay attention to anything that these people had said before? Because people have been saying the same fucking arguments for a long ass time. No one's suddenly come out of the woodwork to support Hamas. They've been doing it for decades. They've been very clear about it. The fact that they're being a little bit more clear and a little bit more direct doesn't mean that they weren't doing it before. How are people surprised that this is happening? I would have been more surprised had people started coming out of the woodworks to decry the situation than I am that so many are coming out to say, not only the argument that always pisses me off when it comes to this, and I was just about to say it, which is what made me think about this, the number of people that will say something didn't happen, but also in their same argument say, but even if it did, it was a good thing.
Wait, what was a good thing?
You've heard that argument, Adam, where someone will say, that's not happening, but if it was, it would be a good thing. And you can insert it with a bunch of different scenarios where someone will say that, like, Hamas isn't doing these, or it didn't do the music festival attack, but even if Hamas did, it was a good thing that they did the attack. Or to use the situation outside of the war, you'll have people that will, it happens in the education conversation where people will say that schools are indoctrinating students in certain ideologies. And someone will say, schools aren't doing that, but if they were, well, they're being indoctrinated in the right direction. Which undoes the denial, to my mind. And it just means that the person's slightly cowardly. Because they're trying to have that plausible deniability of saying, well, I said that it wasn't happening. Yeah, but you also said that it would have been a good thing if it was.
I mean, I guess it's the slow realization that these institutions have been hijacked, I guess, right?
Well, in the second example, yes. I'm just saying that the argument that people will have of the it's not happening, but if it is, it's a good thing, always pisses me off because it just is the most disingenuous horseshit imaginable. Because not only do they ignore what's going on, but they're also still trying to support that which they're denying.
Oh yeah, I don't like those people.
Yeah, it's disgusting. If you think that it's a good thing, why are you denying it? If you think it isn't happening, then why are you trying to support the thing that isn't happening? Because the whole reason that they're denying it is because they know it's something that other people don't like. And it becomes well, you support this. Well, it's not happening. Becomes their defense if someone attacks the fact that they're saying that it's not happening. And if someone tries to say, well, it is happening, they'll just deny, no, it's not. But it's good if it does, but it's not happening. It's this shell game of bullshit.
And it's kind of weird that they play that game, don't they? That shell game type of game. It's weird.
Yep. And according to Raymond Lewis, a guy told him that there was an active shooter at Fort Dix. And despite when he looked it up, the result being, well, it's on lockdown, but there's no active shooter. The guy's still insisting. That shit happens constantly. Someone will hear something once and they'll just insist that it's right from then on. I'm just quickly shooting off a message to someone. I realize this keyboard has a louder set of switches than my previous keyboard did.
Is that on purpose or?
It was my previous keyboard died suddenly, so I immediately purchased another keyboard because I need a keyboard. And this keyboard has loud switches. Didn't mean for it to. I forgot how loud blue switches are. And that's what this one has. It has blue switches in it. If I was doing it on purpose, I would have gone for the really thocky switches rather than the higher pitch, tack, 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 tack style switches. Because if I'm going for audible, fuck, it's a much nicer sound than that tack, 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 tack. But yeah, like I said, it happens constantly where someone will hear something and then they'll deny everything to the contrary. It's the reason why the find people on both sides shit's still ongoing. Because everyone heard immediately that Trump said that there were fine people on both sides. He was referring to Nazis. Meanwhile, you read the actual transcript of what it's from, and after Trump says there's fine people on both sides, the person talking to him interrupts him once. Trump starts to address that. He interrupts Trump again, and Trump goes, "Look, I understand. You're trying to get just a clean soundbite, but I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. I'm not talking about white supremacists. They should be condemned totally. I'm talking about the people that were there in good conscience, not part of those groups that saw that this statue was being taken down, and they were worried when this would end, where it would end. Because if we're taking down this statue because it was of a slave owner, are we going to take down every slave owner statue? What's next? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson? Are we going to stop there, or are we going to continue on? Are people going to be saying that Abraham Lincoln's statues and Teddy Roosevelt statues need to be taken down? Now, the interesting thing is that everything in that quote turned out to be accurate, because that statue was taken down, and then people immediately started going, well, we need to take down George Washington's statues.
Sanguine.
Yep.
You are an unhinged conspiracy theorist. Are you thinking that we are trying to replace people? Why,
I'm
sir?
not an unhinged conspiracy theorist. I just listen to what other people on the other side say that they're doing. And I can go, hey, that person just said that this is what their intention is. And since they're saying what their own intention is, I'm prone to believe that that's what their intention is. But for some reason, apparently, parroting back what people say they're going to do to them is a conspiracy theory, despite the fact that they said that they were going to do it.
And proof, right? I mean, we got some receipts or evidence to the contrary, but you know, it's
They
all.
tried to take down Lincoln the Emancipator. You know the history of Lincoln the Emancipator statue, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell it to the chat? Because I've been talking up a storm and you haven't said anything in a while. So
I really don't want to.
God damn it, Adam.
I mean, I didn't tell you to talk up a chat. It was a really great soliloquy on. I don't think it was a soliloquy, but it was a really nice speech.
It was pretty much a monologue at this point.
Yeah. But it was wonderful, nonetheless. To be honest, I kind of want to eat some food.
Want to tap out for the night?
Yeah.
Shall we go to parting words?
If you don't mind, sir.
Before that, just to let everyone know, Lincoln the Emancipator was a statue that was made by a free man, a newly free man. After the Civil War, he was a slave. He got freed by the Emancipation. So, a bunch of other former slaves, new freemen, also freed by emancipation, wanted to commemorate what Lincoln had done for them. So they petitioned to be able to erect a statue. Their petition was accepted. They paid for the statue entirely of their own funds. They employed the one guy who was a sculptor by trade at that point to make the statue. And upon making the statue, they erected it. It depicts Lincoln, meant to be, I think, during the Emancipation Proclamation, just kind of standing there and speaking kind of mid pose.
He has a he has a hand extended.
And then it depicts a newly freed slave. The chains have dropped away, and it depicts that newly freed man in kind of this look of thank you towards Lincoln. Because Lincoln fought for that to happen and then died before the war, or before everything was over. So they wanted to commemorate him. They did it that way. People are now saying that it's a racist statue, despite it being made by former slaves, commissioned by former slaves, after the former slaves petitioned the local government to allow them to erect this statue to the man who had freed them.
Right.
That's what Lincoln the Emancipator is. But
and no,
okay.
I remember when they were starting to when they started their tear down the statues campaign, and when they brought that one up, they really did twist it out to be they were kneeling before Lincoln, and it's like, one, people, if you buy into this and you just accept whatever these people are telling you, honestly, you are buying into their fucking ploy of you being dumb. Don't fall for it. It's ridiculous. Look into where these statues come from. Look into who these people are. You'll learn a lot.
Yeah, the two statues that pissed me off the most from the list of statues people were trying to tear down were Lincoln the Emancipator, for obvious fucking reasons. And the other one that pissed me off the most, Theodore Roosevelt.
Dude, yeah, no, fuck that.
The man who is quite possibly one of the most egalitarian presidents that we've ever had. Because I know what I'm going to make my parting words. I'll save that for my parting words. It's going to be reading some of Teddy Roosevelt's words on what it means to be an American.
Well, do you want to do that now, or?
I think you wanted to do it, so yes, I'm game doing the parting words. So let's give you the first go. I'm just going to quickly, while I'm doing this and buying time by speaking the entire time that I'm doing this, I'm going to pull up Teddy Roosevelt's hyphenated American.
Well, I'll give you give you a little bit of time. Make sure you check out. I don't know do you have the link to our Discord?
It should be in the description.
Okay, so make sure you check out our Discord. On Tuesdays, we're trying to rekindle the old magic of the minions. We're all hanging out there on Tuesday evenings. We're hopping in and out, so make sure you go and check it out whenever you can.
Starting at about 5 p.m. CST, 6 p.m. EST, and going on until people just get tired and bail out.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people hanging out before too, so you never know. Tuesday's adventurous day out in the
Yep.
Discord, but we're trying to get people to hang out there. And of course, um, any of the links that are in this description, go check them out. Um, oh hey, and check out my arcade because that's always a fun time. Waka waka.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, as I said, Teddy Roosevelt, probably one of the most, if not the most, egalitarian presidents that we've ever had, said the following in his address: "No room in this country for hyphenated Americans." There is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. When I refer to hyphenated Americans, I do not refer to naturalized Americans. Some of the very best Americans I have ever known were naturalized Americans. Americans born abroad, but a hyphenated American is not an American at all. This is just as true of a man who puts native before the hyphen as any man who puts German or Irish or English or French before the hyphen. Americanism is a matter of spirit and of the soul. Our allegiance must be purely to the United States. We must unsparingly condemn any man who holds any other allegiance. But if he is heartily and singly loyal to the Republic, then no matter where he was born, he is just as good an American as anyone else. The one absolutely certain way to bring this nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities, an intricate knot of German Americans, Irish Americans, English Americans, French Americans, Scandinavian Americans, or Italian Americans, each preserving its separate nationality, each at heart feeling more sympathy with Europeans of that nationality than with the other citizens of the American Republic. The men who do not become Americans and nothing else are hyphenated Americans. And there ought to be no room for them in this country. The man who calls himself an American citizen and who yet shows by his actions that he is primarily the citizen of a foreign land plays a thoroughly mischievous part in the life of our body politic. He has no place here, and the sooner he returns to the lands to which he feels his real heart allegiance, the better it will be for every good American. That's one of two speeches that he did on the hyphenated American. The other one is just as fucking fantastic as that one. It's to the shame of America in my mind that for some fucking reason Wilson won the debate on the hyphenated American despite his vitriolic and just absolutely detestable view of who was and wasn't an American and how they should be treated. And Teddy Roosevelt, who had that view, somehow lost. His speech was eloquent. His meaning was pure. It was beautiful the way that he summed up Americanism. In that speech and the other. Both of them I highly recommend you look up Teddy Roosevelt on the hyphenated American. But with that said, it has reached that time. So the zoo is closed. Have a good night, all.
Good night, Dove.
And now I click the end stream, and it takes a little bit for it to